It was very interesting, and there were 58 of us, which was probably a larger group than they should have handled. But I did a lot of growing that year, and I think a lot of the girls did. I was talking to one of my friends, and I said, when did all this happen? And I said, I don't remember all of this. And she says, oh, you were upstairs playing bridge. So I learned to play bridge that year. Never played bridge since. But, you know, it was really a fun year. It was a very maturing year. And I came back to a very different country. And then I graduated, but I had not taken my student teaching and some of my education classes to be able to be a certified teacher. So I came back for a fifth year, and that's why some of the records say I graduated in '65. That's not true. I had a real fun time that fifth year because I did my student teaching, but I also was able to give my senior recital on the organ at Foote. The Greta Foote Memorial Organ in Watley Chapel, and Phyllis Trummel was my organ professor, and it's such an honor now, so many years later, to have her still living and everything. I also got to be her teacher's assistant, which brought me closer to her too. And it took me a few years to learn it wasn't Mrs. Trummel, it was Phyllis. Let's see. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, in Vienna, the CWC program was under the umbrella of the Austro-American Institute. The Austro-American Institute still exists, and every 5 years the Weisgarbers, whom I didn't know because they were on the CWC campus learning about the college the first year they had the program, so I didn't get to meet them, but everybody else knows the Weisgarbers. But the Weisgarbers and now their son Hermann have a reunion every 5 years, and it's the year after our reunion, so if somebody's watching this, remember that. And we go back to Vienna. 4 years ago, it was my privilege and honor that my life was in such a way that I could go to Vienna. And I wrapped up a lot of things that I just needed to wrap up some things. It was a wonderful trip, and I was the only one that had ever gone back to Vienna from my class. Other CWC girls have gone back, but I went back, and they had a little surprise honor for somebody. We went into this concert, and I had a special seat. I thought, what's this about, you know? I want to sit with my friends back there. No, I had to sit pretty close up to the front, but I was honored because I was the first one from CWC from the 63-64 year. And I am hopefully planning to go next year. It's really fun. I lived close to CWC. I lived in the 1600 block on Syracuse Street until I was 13. And then I moved over to 8th and Niagara, and we watched the house being built, and my parents lived there all the rest of their lives, and I am now back in that house. But I only applied to Colorado Women's College, and I only applied to Colorado Women's College because of the lovely girls, ladies, that I saw, because you had to dress up pretty nicely to go down to Colfax, and Colfax was not a bad street then, and I saw these beautiful women from Colorado Women's College, and that's why I chose to go to Colorado Women's College. And then when I was applying, the newscaster came over. I was actually writing my application out, and they announced it was going to be a 4-year school. Well, 1962 came, and we have the decision to make, because a lot of my classmates had only planned to go for 2 years. And I stayed because I got to watch the chapel being built, and I got to watch the organ being built. And I had been taking organ lessons from Phyllis over in Treat Hall, and to go over there and then to have the privilege. And I used to, my 5th year at CWC, I would get up at 6 o'clock, and the custodian got there at 4, but I would get up at 6 o'clock and I'd go over to the chapel because it wasn't really open, but Bob knew I was coming. And I would practice till 5 minutes to 8, and then I'd make the mad dash over to Mason Hall to get my breakfast. then I'd go back and get dressed, and then the chapel was closed at 4 o'clock. So at 5 till 4, I went over to the chapel, and I was practicing 4 hours a day. And about 5 minutes to 6, I'd make the dash over to Mason Hall to get dinner. But I don't practice 4 hours a day ever anymore. And I kind of play the organ, but I don't, I haven't played it for months right now, but I get my moments when I play the organ. I play the piano a lot, and I really think that Colorado Women's College was good for me. I was a wallflower, came from a class of 1,000 to 3,500 students at East High on split session, and 600 students at CWC. It was where I needed to be.
My name is Elizabeth Pat T. Eklund. I'm past president of the CWCAA. I started at CWC in 1964 when, as a fully outfitted young lady in a suit, wearing a hat and gloves, I flew with a bouquet of yellow roses in my arm from Portland to Denver to begin my career at CWC. The roses have faded, but the memories are still very bright and beautiful in my mind. It was the heyday of our college. We had every opportunity. Our classes were mostly taught by professors who held the doctorate degree in their disciplines. The largest class I attended as a classroom class, other than a lecture, had 13 people in it. We had huge lectures because everybody was required to take physics and biology as freshmen, or before they graduated, perhaps not as freshmen. And then we had larger classes, but there was always this small group that you broke apart to join and really drill down in studies of Asian philosophy, American history, music theory, music repertoire. We had a lecture series as part of our convocation that brought the great artists of the world to our little campus, like Ravi Shankar. I'll never forget spending 3 days with Ravi Shankar and his group. Because I was so involved in musical studies, we had our own private access to Maestro Shankar and his group, a very approachable, elegant man who shared so comfortably with us. One of our chief pleasures was a very close acquaintance with our teachers. I don't know if it was part of the faculty handbook that they were to look out for us and become surrogate aunties and uncles, but it happened. We were always invited to dinner, to holiday festivities in the homes of our professors if we were not going to our own homes for holidays. My voice professor, Dr. Arthur Shope, who has since died, and he died I think about 6-7 years ago, and I remained close throughout, since 1964 when I first met him. We bonded immediately through the musical work in his studio. I had an opportunity to sing in operas that he produced here in Denver. He encouraged me when I went abroad to Geneva, Switzerland, to audition for voice lessons at the Conservatory of Geneva, which I did. I thought, well, if Dr. Shope thought I could do it, maybe I'd better just give it a try. So I went over, and in the best French I could muster, the first few weeks that we were there, I asked if I could take voice lessons, and they said, well, of course, mademoiselle, you'll have to audition. And I said, well, okay, when may I do that? And they gave me an appointment, and I found myself standing on the stage, and the great French baritone Pierre Mollet was seated in the auditorium to hear my audition. My great good fortune was that Monsieur Mollet accepted me as his student. So for that year, I took voice lessons every week with Monsieur Mollet, which did a lot for my French and of course he always held class voice as well as private lessons, so I found myself in a peer group where the rising tide was lifting all the little boats with the big ships. I also went with a colleague in the foreign study program, Tita Milas, a classmate. She and I had fenced together as sophomores in our PE requirements, so we decided, well, we need to go over to the fencing academy and introduce ourselves to the master at arms. So we did that. We rode the trolley up. We somehow found it tucked back in a little warren of very, very old streets in Geneva, and introduced ourselves to Monsieur Lavieille, who had a big